is up, everyone, and welcome to the Optimus Fantasy Football Channel. I am Nate Polvogt, joined here by my co-host, Evan Sather, and we're here for the Week 10 waiver wire run. Evan, we're getting into that time of the season where we know it's that playoff push time, right? Like, you know if you're a contender and if you're not, you know if you're in the hunt and when you're not, and it's time to stack those rosters and get ready. And we have got a lot of fantastic players to talk about after what was a pretty wild week 9, Evan, and it's getting ready to the penultimate, I guess, matchup tonight here. We've got the Cardinals and the Cowboys to end the week. But before we get into that matchup, let's go ahead and get into our waiver wire quarterbacks, Evan. The first one I want to talk about, and you can't get out of a show without talking about him, Joe Flacco of the Cincinnati Bengals. 470 yards yesterday. He went off. He had 4 touchdowns. This was an epic performance from Flacco, but he's been doing this since he got to Cincinnati, Evan. Is there any slowing this down, or is he someone who you really do believe is rosterable rest of season in most formats?
As long as he still has Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, I don't think there's going to be stopping Joe Flacco's production. But ironically, it wasn't even Jamar Chase who shined in that offense on Sunday afternoon. He was able to spread the ball to lesser-known wide receivers and tight ends on that team, which also included Tanner Hudson, a guy that nobody's going to be rostering at tight end. Right. And Andre Yoshevus also caught a touchdown pass too. So Flacco has been doing a good job spreading the ball around, and he has yet to throw below 200 yards ever since being traded to the Bengals. So 53% rostership in Sleeper, in addition to 32.9% on ESPN right now. I'm still not ready to say that Flacco is a QB1 because this game was a insanely high-powered offense for both teams, which just led to a back-and-forth battle where both teams had to throw because neither defense could stop the scoring from happening. So as a result, I would say that Joe Flacco is at least worth an add into. You should already have him rostered in 2 QB leagues,
right?
But if you are looking for a streaming quarterback, I would say Flacco is definitely the top guy.
Yeah, he's definitely the top guy on the waiver wire right now for sure. He's QB2 over the last 3 weeks behind Justin Herbert. That's how well he's played since he got to Cincinnati. And I think that's important to talk about here because we're looking at their schedule rest of season. Yeah, their defense sucks, but they don't have a lot of real tough offensive matchups. So they're going to be able to put up points against teams who are also putting up points on their crappy defenses. And this is a team that doesn't want to run the ball. Flacco's averaging 37 pass attempts per game since he joined Cincinnati. So this is going to continue. On volume alone, I feel like he's a fringe quarterback 1 the rest of the season. And if you're someone who's in contention and needs an insurance policy at quarterback, I'd grab Flacco first if I can.
The Bengals have to throw the ball anyway because the run game in Cincinnati sucks. So Chase Brown is not good this year, and they don't have anybody else who can pick up the slack where Samaje Perine happened to injure his ankle in this was on like a special teams return where he just happened to be, what was it? Yeah, he fell on his ankle the wrong way after being tackled, it was a borderline hip drop tackle, but the grip wasn't there. It was just one of those freak things where he just shot himself back up from the ground and jogged to the sideline limping a bit. So no word on whether or not Samaje Perine, he's got a high ankle sprain. He'll miss a couple of weeks. But yeah, this is an offense that has to throw the ball. So Flacco should be your top ad for quarterbacks this week.
Yeah, 100%. And he's getting Chase Brown involved, which is nice. He had 13 targets yesterday. So all around, he's good for this offense offensively. Let's move on to the next one here with the news that Jaden Daniels is going to be down for an indeterminate amount of time. Given the injury, I don't think it's going to be soon when he gets back with that dislocated elbow, Evan. Marcus Mariota becomes someone who really is fantasy viable. 10% rostered on Sleeper, 5.2% rostered on ESPN. But when he's been asked to start this season, aside from one start, he scored 20 plus fantasy points. Whether or not they have Terry McLaurin, I don't think really matters. You've got guys like Jordan. Why can't I think of his name right now? Jaden Lyles, who's picking up some of the slack. and you've got Deebo Samuel, and somehow Marcus Mariota's finding a way to get it done. He's also getting it done on the ground. He's mobile enough, 8 to 10 carries. He's getting 40 to 50 yards in these starts. Jalen Lane, thank you very much. Seco Demeter over on Twitch. I like Marcus Mariota. Now, he's probably like a mid-range QB2 rest of season when he's starting for Jaden Daniels, but in 2 QB leagues, you could do much worse on the waiver wire if you miss out on Joe Flacco.
A lot of people are too harsh on Marcus Mariota, and I genuinely don't understand the whole thing. There are people that are acting like that the Commanders' season is over with no more Jaden Daniels. I don't understand that logic whatsoever, because in the games that Mariota had to step in and throw the football, he's done fine. He plays like a backup quarterback should. He feeds weapons like Deebo Samuel. Terry McLaurin has yet to come back to show some more stability. Right now, the team does not expect McLaurin to play in Week 10, but no matter, because they got a young, hungry guy in Jalen Lane who will step up. Yep. Noah Brown is on IR, so they're going to miss out on him. Luke McCaffrey just got moved to IR because he broke his collarbone, which, there's no coming back in the season later from that. Treylon Burks might have an opportunity to prove that he belongs in the NFL if Marcus Mariota can feed him too. But if anything, this is going to be Zach Ertz season. He sees at least a floor of 60% of the snaps. I saw that Carly mentioned Chris Moore. I don't want to talk about it because Chris Moore played 74% of the snaps against the Seahawks and was not targeted once. It's possible that he might start seeing some incidental volume where he might fall in the end zone like he did against my Bears. This is what I've been talking about with you before, Nate, where the Bears always give up a touchdown to a no-name guy that nobody's ever heard of, and I don't get it, but that's just the way my Bears are. But in any case, Marcus Mariota is not a must-avoid. You can absolutely make a case to spend probably no more than about $5 FAAB. I wouldn't go crazy spending big FAAB dollars if you even have it at this point in the season on him, but he's at least serviceable as a QB2.
Yeah, 100%. I want to move on to our next one because this one's a little bit more intriguing to me. Jacoby Brissett appears to be the starter now in Arizona. If you read through between the lines, everything that's going on, read the tea leaves, if you will, it feels like Kyler Murray has been soft benched. And if that is the case, we're going to see a lot more Jacoby Brissett, which is good, right? For this Arizona offense, he has been far more efficient than Kyler Murray. 22 plus fantasy points the last 2 weeks as the starter. 2 touchdowns in both games. He's only thrown 1 interception. He had 6 carries for 26 yards against Green Bay. This week against Dallas, he's projected around 20 fantasy points, which makes sense to me. And we're seeing guys like Zay Jones all of a sudden get involved in this offense. I like Jacoby Brissett. If this does turn into a soft benching and we don't see much Kyler rest of season, I think Jacoby Brissett's a viable QB2, someone you can start rest of season.
Jacoby Brissett is also an unexciting backup option at quarterback who has ironically been playing better than Kyler Murray all season long. If you've listened to this show long enough, whenever we bring up the Arizona Cardinals, you all know that I hate Kyler Murray. I hate his work ethic. I think it's terrible. I think that a lot of people were trying to dismiss a lot of the claims that were in that homework clause that went into his contract extension that inevitably got removed anyway, just because him and his agent successfully got that out. But Kyler Murray, I don't agree, is being soft benched. I think it's convenient to rest him until his foot is fully better. In the meantime, they can work out whatever is wrong with him so that he performs better in this offense that is tailored for him. And he's still not succeeding, which, if you're an Arizona Cardinals fan, I'm sorry. You're with how much they paid this guy to be your starting quarterback, you're stuck with him for the foreseeable future, because it's not likely that they're going to be doing what the Miami Dolphins might do with Tua Tagovailoa and eat like a $30-some million dead cap if they cut him in the offseason, but that's nothing more than a rumor right now. So Jacoby Brissett at least has thrown 2 touchdowns in the 2 appearances he saw before the bye week. They're playing Dallas pretty much right now, so we'll see how he does tonight against a relatively soft defense that Dallas has had. So at the very least, he's got the weapons necessary to get out there, throw it to Harrison, throw it to McBride. That's really all you need. Cardinals, I could see winning this game. Brissett, I would make an argument that I'd rather have him over Mariota because I think he's a slightly better backup quarterback. But again, I'm not spending more than $5 FAAB if you even have that left.
Sure. I mean, outside of Flacco, there's nobody you're really spending much on as far as quarterbacks go because you're at a point where you're streaming or you're just trying to patch your lineup for a week or two. Let's move on to Davis Mills, thrust back into the spotlight. This former Davis Mills truther does not love it. Please don't get me to relapse. I don't want it. But he's going to be starting more than likely. CJ Stroud is in concussion protocol. He wasn't atrocious against Denver, Evan. He went 17 of 30 for 137 yards, 2 carries for 7 yards. He did not turn the ball over, was only sacked twice with that stout Denver defense. What Davis Mills does well is gets rid of the ball quickly. When he needs to get rid of the ball quickly, he doesn't take sacks, and he's really good at handing it off. I don't know that I have any interest in rostering Davis Mills in fantasy. I think that there are plenty of other options that are much more rosterable. There's 2 more coming up that we'll talk about that I would much rather have than Davis Mills.
Davis Mills did pretty decent for being rusty. I don't think that he's a must-have either. He's pretty low on my priority order for backup quarterbacks that you need. We already talked about 3 of them that you should easily want over a Davis Mills. And don't get me wrong, having a Nico Collins is very nice to throw to. And before the Texans went out and got CJ Stroud, Davis Mills did decent in being flung into the starting role for the Texans. He finished his QB 21, 292 completed of 479 attempts for 3,118 yards, 17 to 15 touchdown to interception ratio, took it to the house 2 times himself. That's not too shabby for a backup quarterback when he plays a full season, well, almost a full season. But no, Davis Mills is still rather rusty, and there's a reason he's a backup in the NFL. You don't really need to spend any FAAB dollars on Mills. If he's the best quarterback on your waiver wire for some reason, try not to spend any FAAB dollars on him. You don't need to.
Yeah. This is like a break glass in case of emergency type situation with Davis Mills. Mac Jones looks like he's going to be starting again. The toe issue with Brock Purdy continues to persist, Evan. Mac Jones still, his roster ship's really low given some of his production, 10% rostered on Sleeper, 6.1% on ESPN. Do you have any interest in Mac Jones? Should he continue to be the starter? I mean, is he someone that you feel like you can add long-term for a playoff push and you can reliably roster in 2 quarterback leagues?
Well, I'm still expecting Brock Purdy to come back at some point, despite the knee issue that they're really taking their time with Brock Purdy, which is, first of all, smart of the 49ers, and second of all, Mac Jones is just a solid QB2 and nothing more. I mean, if you're in a 2-quarterback league, he should already be rostered anyway. He's 10% rostered in sleeper redraft leagues. ESPN, which I don't normally play on, has 6.1% ESPN rostership. Mac Jones is I'd still rather have him over Davis Mills, but, I'll pass compared to the other quarterbacks we've had so far. His completion percentage is fine, but he's got those iffy games against the Atlanta Falcons and the Houston Texans where he doesn't even get to 200 passing yards that worry me a bit. But again, I mean, the Niners are very lucky to have a Mac Jones on their team to be able to get the wins that they need, where I'm sure Jacksonville Jaguar fans want him back so badly. But do I have much interest in Mac Jones in fantasy football? Not really.
Yep.
I'll put it to you that way.
Again, this is a guy where if you're desperate, you're in a deeper league, most of the quarterbacks are gone. Mac Jones is somehow floating around. He's probably gone in most deeper leagues. He's a guy worth a look, but there are other better options that we've talked about already. Last one we're going to talk about, JJ McCarthy is back in Minnesota, Evan. Started last night, 25% rostered on Sleeper, 25.3% on ESPN. Looked better last night. It wasn't the absolute mess we saw the first 7 of 8 quarters that he played, but it still wasn't anything electric. What do you feel this Minnesota offense is going to be with McCarthy moving forward? Is he someone that you're willing to at least maybe take a shot on in 2 QB leagues?
Oh, absolutely. He should already be rostered in 2 QB leagues, at least as a backup on a bench. But that's about as far as I'm willing to go for JJ McCarthy, because the problem is that he has now 3 games in the NFL where he's played against starters. He had the one preseason game last year against the Raiders where he tore his meniscus and couldn't go. But this is the most regular season action that he's been able to see so far. It's 3 games. He's going to need time to develop. He needs to build some experience. He needs to get used to the Minnesota Viking way of playing offense. He's got to build more chemistry with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson and so on. I would say, like, against the Lions, he played about roughly the same as he did against my Bears, despite the 2 defenses being nothing alike. So you can at least count on JJ taking it to the house himself on his best games, and he needs to improve upon that completion percentage, but I don't see this guy being a Christian Ponder right now. So if you really need to add JJ McCarthy, if he's really your best option, sure, you can spend a little bit of FAAB on him, but he will be lucky to reach 20 fantasy points in any given week as long as he can take care of the football, which he has not done very well so far.
Right. I don't have a lot of faith in JJ McCarthy. I mean, he's got 4 interceptions in 3 games. He's got 4 fumbles. I mean, granted, he only lost 1 of them, but still, the ball security thing is an issue to me. And it feels like this offense is going to try to not throw the ball. I mean, he's had 25 pass attempts once, otherwise 20 and 21 passing attempts. So he's not a high volume guy who's going to get you a lot of points in fantasy. I'd really rather pivot to a guy like Flacco, Mariota, or Brissett if he's going to be starting for any period of time in Arizona. There are just better options available. Plain and simple.
Easy.
Yep. All right. Before we move on to running backs, Evan, I want to tackle this question in the chat here. We've got Salvatore Leonardo 17 on YouTube. Traded George Pickens for Rico Dowdle. He's got Jamar Chase, Rashee Rice, Quentin Johnston, Keyshawn Boutte. Running backs are Achane, Jonathan Taylor. I'm unsure, Chuba Hubbard, I'm going to assume.
Yeah, Chuba Hubbard.
Yeah, Salvatore, that's a pretty good deal to get Dowdle back. He's shown that he's got a lot of value as a running back. He's going to be a high volume guy. They don't necessarily believe in Chuba Hubbard anymore. So I think that was a good move for you. ASET7YJ, Franklin in a third, Troy Franklin in a third for Michael Pittman and Parker Washington. First seed right now. Does that feel like a good deal for you?
I'm assuming this is a dynasty league, or is it a keeper league? I'm guessing this is dynasty, but I need to know more information about this because I don't know which players you have. I don't know which one. I don't know what you're trying to accomplish here because Parker Washington is not exactly a strong dynasty hold. And thank you for clarifying that this is a dynasty league. But if ASET7YJ, if you could give us more information about like which players or draft picks you have right now, what you're trying to accomplish with this trade, that would be a lot more helpful because right now it's a little too difficult to figure out what you're trying to do here.
Well, this is what I say. If you're a first seed, I'm assuming that you're chasing points going into the playoffs to make sure that you stay number 1. I'm okay with moving off Troy Franklin in a 3rd round pick for Pittman and Parker Washington if that's your goal. If you're looking for depth and points rest of season to make sure that you stay as that number 1 seed and you keep winning through the playoffs, I do think this is a good move. Franklin, you're not giving up anything that's a huge depth loss, plus a third. I don't really value 3rd round picks very highly. I barely value 2nd round picks highly. Just kind of depends on the draft class. And I like Parker Washington rest of season. With Travis Hunter out, I think he rolls into a role that they wanted Travis Hunter in. We saw him get the bulk of the volume this past week. A couple people on our staff called it. So I don't hate this. If that's your goal and you're going for solidifying your lineup for the rest of the season to make that playoff push and make a push for a championship, I don't hate it at all. With that, Evan, let's move on to the running backs here on this Week 10 waiver wire. It's not pretty at all. We'll start with what's probably the best option. Devin Singletary of the New York Giants, 28% rostered on Sleeper, 4.5% rostered on ESPN. I didn't want to be talking about him today, Evan. I'm going to be very clear about that. But then he went in and he split carries with Tyrone Tracy.
Inevitable.
It was mostly inevitable. I hoped it wasn't. But he gets passing work that Tyrone Tracy does not and will not get. Tyrone Tracy is just not a pass catching back at this point. If you're going to go after a guy and it's ugly on the waiver wire, I think Devin Singletary has to be your priority.
Oof, you are in really bad shape if Devin Singletary is your best option to go pick up on the waiver wire if you need a running back. At this point, Singletary doesn't really hold a lot of standalone value. Sure, he did okay in a split backfield against an iffy 49ers defense that are still doing a really good job being held together by Robert Saleh with a bunch of backups out there, no Fred Warner, a lot of guys missing, and so on and so forth. But Singletary is not a guy that I would recommend spending any FAAB on if you can help it. You're not going to get a lot of standalone value out of this guy. If he falls in the end zone, sure, you're happy, but like 7.1 fantasy points, like you're riding the bench on any fantasy team at that point. So, and 2 catches for 8 yards. Yeah, no, I'm out on Devin Singletary. I think his best days are behind him. He wasn't even really that good when he was a Buffalo Bill. So, like you said, I mean, you didn't want to talk about him. I don't either. Let's move on to another running back.
Yep. Well, I mean, the options just get worse. The next one up is Chris Rodriguez of the Washington Commanders, 6% rostered on Sleeper, 0.6% rostered on ESPN. Again, these are the options that are available to us. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt has been kind of underperforming. And then we saw Rodriguez against Seattle getting blown out by Seattle. 12 carries for 65 yards and a touchdown, getting junk time carries. If only we could have seen that courtesy for Jaden Daniels to get him out of the damn game before he got hurt. But, I mean, I think we're at a point with this Washington backfield. We know JCM isn't the guy. Chris Rodriguez isn't either. If you're stabbing for a running back at this point in the season, this is kind of where we're at, and you're looking for guys who are part of a committee that could see the touchdown week in and week out. Chris Rodriguez could be the guy that gets some of that red zone work, maybe a reception that turns into a touchdown. Again, it's ugly, but if you need somebody and you need to flex them, I guess it works.
I will disagree with you on that one, Nate Polvogt, and I'll tell you why. Chris Rodriguez is a part of a committee like what we already established. Whoever has the hot hand is whoever's going to get the volume. Chris Rodriguez saw 12 carries for 65 yards, and he fell in the end zone against the Seattle Seahawks, which is quite a lovely accomplishment considering that the Seahawks defense is not that easy to get past. But then there were other games, like against the Chiefs, where he saw 4% of the snaps and only took 1 carry for 2 yards. They didn't even use him against the Chiefs in Week 8. Week 9 is where they started using him more, but it's worth noting that that's 34% of the snaps. And then Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is seeing 46, and Jeremy McNichols is seeing 26. This is not a stable backfield. It is a frustrating running back by committee. I have warned a lot of people all over the place about this backfield, where a lot of people were thinking that Bill's going to be the bell cow finally in this Commander's backfield. He's the guy. Look at how exciting he is. Yeah, he seems like a great dude and a great hang and all that, but he's not. He's a Brian Robinson replacement. The Commanders prefer a platoon-style backfield in their committee where they're just going to use certain situations where they're going to deploy certain guys. And on top of that, like, JCM doesn't offer any pass-catching work, and neither does Chris Rodriguez. So I would strongly recommend avoiding all Commanders running backs if you can help it.
I mean, sure. And look, that's the theme of the waivers this week. Most of these guys you want to avoid if you can help it. When you get to week 10, it gets really ugly. Not everybody's as lucky to be in some of the leagues we're in where some of these guys are still available. So again, like if you're chasing like any points, you're in a bad situation with injuries and waiver wire. Chris Rodriguez will at least get you a safe like 2 to 3 points, so you're not putting up a 0. Some weeks that's what we're going for here. We're going to move on to Isaiah Davis of the New York Jets, 34% rostered on Sleeper, 9.1% rostered on ESPN. Evan, I like this one about as much as the other ones, but here's the thing, is that again, if you're chasing points and trying to fill some of these flex spots because you're in a tough spot with the buys and injuries, as we've seen so many of them and they pile up, Isaiah Davis is a guy who's serviceable. Again, don't love it. Believe me, he is one of the last guys I want to be putting into my roster on a Sunday. I had to do it this past Sunday. I just did not have a choice. But when he gets volume, in the occasion that he does get volume against a bad defense, and they're on bye this week, so this is more of a speculative ad, 7 carries for 65 yards. He had 5 catches for 44. He does catch the ball. And if they decide to trade Breece Hall, which I don't think is going to happen, but should they move Breece Hall, Isaiah Davis moves into their RB1 role, which isn't much, but it's something. And again, in these situations where we're trying to add players and just fill a roster spot week in and week out, there are much worse options than Isaiah Davis. If you get him on the week he catches fire, it could save your week. If he doesn't, you're going to get more points than you expected by not filling a roster spot.
Well, Jesus Christ, Nate! Way to let me get out what I needed to what I needed to say about Isaiah Davis. That's pretty much the bulk of what I wanted to talk about. But I will at least take this opportunity to pour some cold water on the trade rumors because the New York Jets have shown zero interest in trading Breece Hall. There has been no speculation whatsoever about possible destinations. There are a lot of people all over the place even talking about him going to my Bears just because, well, the Bears need a running back and it would make logical sense. So let's just start passing this off as fact. No, it's not going to happen. He's not going anywhere from the Jets. Isaiah Davis will not be taking over this backfield unless Breece gets hurt, which is pretty much the only way that's going to happen. Isaiah Davis is at least getting enough snaps to get some standalone value, which I know we've said on past shows before. So if you haven't rostered him already, you can absolutely do that and make a case to flex him on any given week. So Isaiah Davis is the only running back on our list that I prefer to be added if you're in need of running back. And 18.9 fantasy points don't come along easily like you did against the terrible Bengals run defense in week 8. But coming up against Cleveland, that is not going to be an easy matchup, and I do not recommend starting Isaiah Davis whatsoever against the Browns next week. It's not really going to get much easier for him, quite frankly, not until like week 14.
Yep. No, and like I said, this isn't ideal. I don't want to roster Isaiah Davis. I don't want to start Isaiah Davis. But we get into these situations and you do the best you can. And I mean, honestly, you could do worse because he's a player that could fall into a decent fantasy score. I can't say the same about Chris Rodriguez. He's someone like I'm really only going after if a guy like Isaiah Davis or Devin Singletary, who I do think could fall into some red zone work, and I think he could end up with a touchdown. The could is the important part of this. The last guy we're going to talk about is Jarrett Patterson, Los Angeles Chargers, 0% rostered on Sleeper and 0.4% rostered on ESPN for a reason. He got a little bit more notoriety, if you will, this week because he basically split the backfield with Kamani Vidal, who was everyone's waiver wire darling last week, which makes sense given the performances that he had put out. Patterson, though, 11 carries for 30 yards last week with a 21% snap share. This week, 9 carries for 44 yards on a 28% snap share. Look, this is nothing exciting, and unless you expect Jarrett Patterson to get some red zone carries, some goal line carries, there's no reason to roster him. But again, if you're in a pinch, this is a guy that could conceivably score if Omarion Hampton is still on IR, and we're hearing he's not coming back until after their week 12 bye.
Yeah, so that was what I was going to get into as well, is that Omarion Hampton is not expected to come back until after the bye week. So if you are rostering either Patterson or Vidal, you can kiss the potential volume that either one of them are going to get goodbye at that point, because I don't see why the Chargers just don't lean on Hampton in a bell cow role for the rest of the season, which he kind of already was doing anyway in 3 out of the 5 games he was able to play in. I mean, if we don't count Washington where that was where he got hurt, but nevertheless, Jarrett Patterson, at least, yeah, like we were just talking about, the volume stinks, but if he falls into the end zone, that's where it becomes valuable. And that's not something that the Chargers are really trusting much about him to give him those carries. I mean, unless something happens to Vidal, that's when that would happen. But at that point, the Chargers would start looking for a bunch of guys to sign off a practice squad or start making calls around to see who's available to play running back, which, I mean, hey, maybe they'll even call you to play running back, Nate.
I wouldn't recommend it. I have bad knees, bad hamstrings, bad ankles. I want to throw this out here, too. It is official per head coach Jim Harbaugh. Omarion Hampton will not be coming back until after the week 12 bye. And this hurts, too, with this situation. Joe having season-ending surgery to that high ankle sprain, you're missing your 2 best offensive linemen. Their run game just isn't going to be as potent. Hampton can get through that, but guys like Jarrett Patterson and Kamani Vidal are built to get past offensive line issues. And coming from Lou Brunson, if only we hadn't talked about Omarion Hampton not coming back until after the bye weeks ago when he first got hurt. We kind of saw it coming, if we're being honest. So
good luck, Justin Herbert.
Yeah, right. No, but hey, he's playing well. He's being forced to do more. It's good for fantasy. So from that aspect, I'll take it. All right, Evan, let's move on to the wide receiver position. We're going to start with some more exciting options, and one we've already sort of discussed. Parker
Before we do that,
Washington. Yes, sir.
Before we do that, I'd like to at least answer Modify Season's Dynasty trade question,
Yes.
if that's okay.
Let's get to that.
Yeah, so I guess I'll let you lead this off.
All right, so Dynasty trade. They are giving Puka and Troy Franklin and receiving Roma Dunze, Jordan Addison, and Trevion Henderson. They were just offered this trade. Evan, I wouldn't give up Puka.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why somebody would want to take Puka at this point, but that's not. Yeah, I mean, you're a contender, so I don't see why you would give up the pieces that help you get there, because Puka Nacua is a top 5 wide receiver at this point. Like, there's no reason to give up a top 5 wide receiver to a team that's just shooting their luck and seeing what happens. I mean, yeah, he comes back after the week 8 bye after he got hurt, 7 of 8, 95, and a touchdown against the terrible Saints defense. It's not going to get any worse for him. Puka Nacua is matchup proof. I mean, even after missing a game and a half, he's still the number 4 wide receiver in PPR formats. So you would be a crazy person to trade away a Puka Nacua at this point. Roma Dunze, Addison, and Henderson is not enough in return. I don't care. I mean, they could offer you 3 firsts, and I probably still wouldn't take that if you're in win now mode. So yeah, no, smash decline.
Yep. And plus, like, Troy Franklin's getting enough work where, I mean, I think he's becoming situationally pretty reliably startable. So, yeah, like Evan said, you don't want to take that one. All right, we're going to move on to the wide receivers. Like I said, this is a lot more exciting than the running backs, Evan. We're going to start with Parker Washington in Jacksonville, 27% rostered on Sleeper, 5.1% rostered on ESPN. Led the Jacksonville Jaguars in targets yesterday with the absence of Travis Hunter. Kind of like I was saying earlier, it feels like Parker Washington is doing what they wanted Travis Hunter to do. He's done it 2 weeks in a row, 10 targets against the Rams in week 7 before their bye. Only 4 catches, but still 10 fantasy points. Then this past week against Las Vegas, 9 targets, 8 catches, 90 yards. He has 1 touchdown this season. That was week 5 against Kansas City. Not that these options in Jacksonville are going to be that exciting, but Parker Washington seems to be locked into some pretty solid volume rest of season. And for that reason, I think he's a solid add on the waiver wire this week.
This is Parker Washington season, ladies and gentlemen. I don't understand how the Jaguars always get here over the last 3 years, but they always seem to be in denial that they need Parker Washington, and then injuries happen, and all of a sudden Parker Washington is producing better at times than their starters. Now, speaking of Travis Hunter, unfortunately he had to go on IR because of a knee injury. Right now there is optimism surrounding it. His ACL is intact, and thank goodness that's the case, because he's got time to heal, and he's got time to return to full health as well. I just hate to see anything worse happen to somebody like a Travis Hunter, simply because, hey man, we don't want to see Travis Hunter have his career ruined just because of a bad team that's led by Trevor Lawrence throwing the football, throwing hospital passes out there. So, Like I said, this is Parker Washington season. Parker Washington will produce against easy secondaries, like against the Raiders, 8 of 9 for 90 yards, but then at the same time, if he has to play against a good secondary like the Rams have, 4 of 10 for 52. So that's still good enough for 10 fantasy points. You're not too mad about something like that, but Parker Washington, I'm not counting on to be a reliable option, especially next week against the Houston Texans. Like, that's going to be a very difficult matchup for a Parker Washington to overcome. I'm not spending much on FAAB for Parker Washington at all. Like, I mean, unless you're like ultra desperate for wide receiver, you have to throw more FAAB at him. But if somebody else in your league gets Parker Washington, let him have him. He's not worth that much.
Yeah, I'm not going crazy on FAAB, but if I need a wide receiver, if I'm looking to flex somebody, Parker Washington's a pretty solid option. I do, however, like Calvin Austin of the Pittsburgh Steelers a little bit better than Parker Washington. 23% rostered on Sleeper, 11% rostered on ESPN. He's seen consistent volume all season, 6 targets the last 2 weeks. He did miss 2 weeks earlier in the season to injury. He seems to be earning trust in this offense. He seems to be earning some more high-value targets from Aaron Rodgers. Of course, he had the almost touchdown catch this past Sunday. I was not able to haul it in. but he just seems from a volume standpoint like he's someone you can rely on to slide into a flex slot in a week where you're needy.
If you can believe this, Nate, I happen to get Calvin Austin for very minimal FAAB dollars in my 10-team dynasty league. Somebody dropped Calvin Austin, and I'm happy to roster him at this point because there are certain weeks where he will either fall in the end zone or he'll at least get to it a minimum of 50 yards on 5 catches, which is good enough for 10 fantasy points in PPR leagues, and you're happy enough with that. Now, I'm not saying Calvin Austin is a must start in any given week because his volume is always going to remain inconsistent with just how bad the Steelers team is. Calvin Austin is he's not exactly a strong wide receiver too outside of DK Metcalf. And then they got Roman Wilson out there who decides to just leap for no reason and then fumble the football. Like, I can see why the Steelers don't throw the ball to Roman Wilson that much. They really do not have strong depth behind DK Metcalf, and Calvin Austin, unfortunately, is not good enough to be the second wide receiver behind DK Metcalf, but right now you don't really care all that much about that because he's at least getting some targets thrown his way. But Austin is not somebody I want to spend much FAAB on at all if I can help it, just because of the wild, inconsistent volume. He hasn't scored a touchdown since week 3 against the New England Patriots. Yeah, don't spend a lot of FAAB on Austin. We're at this point in the season now where good luck finding reliable options on the waiver wire, as you know, it's rough out there, man.
Yeah, well, you can see it. All the players we're talking about, none of them we're super excited about. We're going to move on to Torrey Horton as someone I'm actually a little bit more excited about. 15% rostered on Sleeper, 7.3% rostered on ESPN. I like Torrey Horton in Seattle. I like that he's their deep threat. He's seeing the deep targets. 4 targets for 4 catches, 48 yards, and 2 touchdowns against Washington. Now, granted, that was in a blowout, but it was in the half where Sam Darnold went absolutely insane. Completed all of his passes, threw 4 touchdown passes, and he clearly likes Torrey Horton. And really, once you get past Jackson Smith and Jigba, it's anybody's guess as to who's getting volume, and it seems like Torrey Horton is starting to earn that. And in an explosive offense, I want a part of that. Again, not a guy I'm willing to pay up on to get, but I think he's really rosterable, and you can probably roll him out as a flex and hope for a touchdown most weeks.
I'm not ready to go that far on Torrey Horton. Not so fast here, folks, and I'll tell you why. Cooper Kupp happened to be out with the hamstring and heel injury. He didn't play week 9. It remains to be seen how long he'll be out because, as we know about hamstring injuries, they do linger. They're a colossal pain to have to get past. Cooper Kupp is on the wrong side of 30 when you don't exactly heal as fast as you did in your early 20s like 10 years ago. So Cooper Kupp, unfortunately, may have to miss a little bit of time, but he's not out for the year. So Torrey Horton only saw four catches on 4 targets and caught 2 touchdowns, which were completely situational. And Sam Darnold is just playing lights out. So kudos to him. The Commanders' defense is not that great, but hey, man, Torrey Horton has a very good matchup next week against the Arizona Cardinals, who are also not good in stopping the pass. So there's a lot of excitement behind Torrey Horton that he could be a second half breakout candidate with Cooper Kupp having to miss probably a little bit of time, but until we see more, I'm not ready to make that call at this time. Okay, congratulations, you fell in the end zone, but take away those touchdowns, and that's just 8 fantasy points, which is good enough for decent flex value. Not low-end flex value, but decent flex value. So, but it's like you were saying, Nate, if you were hoping that he falls in the end zone, great, because he's got 5 touchdowns now. Well, actually, make that 6. I'm sorry, make that 6 because he does have a return touchdown. So that's also something to keep in mind.
He's wide. If you have a return points league, he's rostered. I can guarantee you that. Yeah. He feels like he is that second half breakout guy. Cooper Kupp going down. He's gaining favor with Sam Darnold. This is a team that's on their way to winning their division. I like Torrey Horton, I think, a little bit more than you do. We're going to move on to the next one, Troy Franklin. We've already discussed him a little bit, of the Denver Broncos, 55% rostered on Sleeper. He is 51.9% rostered on ESPN. Look, his last 3 games, 10 targets, 8 targets, 10 targets, 12 PPR points, 26 PPR points, 8 PPR points. Of course, he didn't get in the end zone against Houston, but nobody really did. That game was just an absolute disaster. But I like Troy Franklin. I think he's the solid verifiable wide receiver 2 in this offense. Marvin Mims is dinged up again. It seems to happen to him every year. And when he is playing, he's that deep threat guy. He's like 2 to 3 targets a game. They don't really use him that much except in rare occasions. Troy Franklin might be my favorite wide receiver on the waiver wire because I think he has the most long-term value in most fantasy formats this season. At least if guys left on the waiver wire this week.
In theory, you're right, Nate, but are you not concerned about this Broncos passing offense being as awful as it is?
Sure, I definitely am. But the thing is that some of these guys are going to be kind of insulated from that because Troy Franklin and Courtland Sutton, maybe to a lesser extent, Courtland Sutton are going to see their targets because they're the guys that Bo Nix trusts. So as bad as this passing offense can be, there are certain guys that are still going to see targets. I'd be more worried if I was relying on Marvin Mims, Pat Bryant, Evan Ingram. They seem to be hurt more by this bad passing offense, whereas Franklin and I really do believe Courtland Sutton are going to be fine.
So you're saying you have no faith in Pat Bryant?
I will eventually, and I think there will be a point when he becomes relevant in this offense. It's just not this season. It's not built to support more than maybe 2 fantasy relevant receivers week in and week out. So I do like the talent, though. He'll get there. Troy Franklin took a season too, so you never know what next year brings.
Yeah, so Troy Franklin is 55% rostered in sleeper leagues and ESPN leagues. He is 51.9%. So he should already be rostered in maybe half of the leagues here. So that are there's a 50% chance he's already rostered in yours. But if you happen to be on the other side of that 50% where he's available, sure, you can definitely take a shot on a Troy Franklin. I wouldn't feel safe starting him, though, with how uncatchable a lot of the passes are going his way. I don't necessarily blame Bo Nix for everything, but I think they just need to reevaluate the coaches to figure out what the heck is going on with this sophomore slump that Bo Nix is going through. And I mean, it's not even just him; it's the whole offense, right? Like you know more than I do, Nate.
It's play calling. They're not play. I have theories that I really think Sean Payton's trying to force an offense down their throats when they don't have the personnel to run it. And I think that's the issue ultimately. But I do feel good starting at least the next 2 weeks. They've got Las Vegas and Kansas City at home. Vegas is a bad offense, and Denver loves to run up the score. They're their biggest rivals. And then Kansas City, Denver always plays them tough. This is a game where they're going to have to step up. They did it last season. They almost knocked off Kansas City at the end of the season. I think they can do it here at home, and I think Franklin will be a big part of that. So I love him for at least the next 2 weeks. We got Kells 22 on YouTube. Torrey Horton to hold? Absolutely. If you've got him rostered, hold on to him.
Yeah, Kels, I don't know if you just tuned in. We were actually just talking about Torrey Horton, so maybe later rewind a little bit, but here's another thing that I wanted to mention until Nate cut me off to move me on. Gosh, how dare you, Nate. So I was also going to mention Jake Bobo has an Achilles injury, which is also adding to the potential second half breakout that Torrey Horton holds. So no pun intended there, Kels, but yeah, go ahead and hold on to Torrey Horton and see what happens. He's not a safe start right now unless you absolutely have nobody else to flex. But yeah, wait and see. If you can afford it, congratulations.
Yep. No, I would definitely hold him. We got Sport Zone 76 saying Franklin did well for me this week. He did well for me too. Very pleased to have started him in the places that I did. Might not have helped me win so much, but hey, what can you do? The last one we're going to talk about, Evan, Chimere Dike over in Tennessee, 48% rostered on Sleeper, 23.2% rostered on ESPN. I love Dike, but again, he's another one of these receivers, very streaky. You're looking for that big play, that big touchdown for him to be fantasy relevant. He had one catch for 5 yards, then 4 kick returns for 117 yards and a touchdown on Sunday. I like Dike. He's really streaky. I don't think he's someone you can start week in and week out. I don't mind rostering him, but I think people are getting a little bit too excited about who probably is the best receiver in Tennessee, but he's the best receiver in Tennessee.
For whatever that's worth, take that for what you will. But unfortunately, with Chimere Dike getting good snaps and only catching 1 of 3 targets against a pretty good Chargers defense, I'm not looking for Chimere Dike to be putting up like what Calvin Ridley has been capable of putting up. I mean, Ridley's best game was 5 for 10 against the Arizona Cardinals for 131 yards. I don't see Dike doing that again anytime soon. The closest he came was week 8 against the Colts, where the Colts' passing defense was taken by surprise as the Titans tried to keep up with them. But now that they're having a week 10 bye, Chimere Dike is not exactly a strong stash that I'm recommending at this time. He played okay against the Chargers on special teams, at least as their primary kick returner. He found the end zone. He scored a touchdown, which put him at 7.5 fantasy points. If you were able to get special teams touchdowns, I hope your leagues count those. If not, then tell your commissions to get on that. But yeah, right now, Chimere Dike, for the third week in a row that we've talked about him, don't spend a whole lot to go get him either. Like, see if you can even get him for free. I mean, that might not be so realistic in most leagues, but I'm not crying the blues if I don't get him and if I have like maybe $2 FAAB to put on him left.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're not getting him for free. Managers are desperate. They're hungry. And the community as a whole of analysts has been pretty high on him. So, all right, Evan, let's move on to the tight end position. As always, this one's going to be a little bit thinner, but we're going to start with Juwan Johnson, 43% rostered on Sleeper, 32.6% rostered on ESPN. They got the new rookie quarterback who we definitely did not talk about tonight in New Orleans, which we will talk about him, but not as someone you should be adding. Juwan Johnson's kind of fallen off the last few weeks, Evan, but he did see 3 catches for 31 yards and a touchdown this past Sunday against the Rams. It looks like Shuck's going to target him a little bit more. Again, not an exciting option, but he could fall into being a top 12 tight end any week with a touchdown.
I was just about to ask you, has he fallen off? Because he's still doing pretty well with the volume that he's being given. His worst week was against the Patriots when he lost that fumble and then basically didn't see another target because Kellen Moore's staff didn't want to trust him anymore with the ball in his hands. So outside of a mistake like that, he's the tight end 10 right now in PPR leagues. I'm honestly surprised he's only 43% owned in sleeper leagues, in addition to 32.6% in ESPN leagues. Like, that blows my mind. I don't understand how this guy is not more rostered. Actually, I take that back. I do. It's because he has the Saints team name next to him, and the Saints look awful right now. So that's hurting his roster ownership value. So go get Juwan Johnson if he's out there. Like, don't be afraid to spend $5 FAAB or whatever you got left on him, and you can make a case to flex a tight end in addition to your other starting tight end. Don't be afraid to go double tight end in certain weeks because Juwan Johnson is pretty much their third pass, sometimes second target in this offense behind Chris Olave, depending on if Rashid Shaheed feels like showing up. But, not to knock Shaheed too hard. He's playing pretty well this year, too, in this messy Saints offense. But, yeah, go get Juwan Johnson. What are y'all doing out there?
Well, I mean, honestly, it was that week 4 to week 6 span where it was 5 points, 3 points, and then half a point, as you mentioned, against New England. People got scared, and I get that. I mean, Juwan Johnson was a guy you're probably drafting thinking, we'll see if this pays off, but once it falls off, I will start streaming tight ends, and I think a lot of people move that way. But
and after all, Nate, don't Juwan Johnson on your team?
Well, I do, and I've actually got a fair amount of Juwan Johnson. I was patient and didn't move off of him. Another player I've got a lot of, and we're going to talk about next with tight ends, Colston Loveland, the Chicago Bears, the game hero on Sunday, of course, with that long touchdown to end it. 27% rostered on Sleeper, 23.6% rostered on ESPN. Look, I'm a big fan of the kid, and I think he's getting into a point where you can't deny his role. I know Cole Kmet went out with the concussion, so that definitely helped bolster Loveland. But the last 2 weeks, he's seen an 81% snap share, 5 targets last week, 3 catches for 38 yards. And, of course, he had 7 targets this week once Kmet went down, 6 catches for 118 yards, and he had 2 touchdowns. I know that the volume's not impressive leading up to these last 2 weeks. Cole Kmet may not even miss next weekend. He might be able to play, but I don't know that I care because what I saw on Sunday was a quarterback who has been struggling on and off in a new system, getting used to it in only his second year in the NFL, behind an offensive line that hasn't been as good as I think some people expected it to be with some of the rebuilds, who has found a target he can trust.
Honestly, the offensive line is better.
It is better than it was last season, but it's not. I think there's a level a lot of people expected. Caleb is still finding himself scrambling at times, and he's found a guy he likes. Colston Loveland is a reliable target. Got a lot of work, and I think that's going to continue regardless of whether Cole Kmet is healthy or not. I think Colston Loveland has earned a spot in this offense.
Colston Loveland was going to get that spot in the offense regardless. I mean, the Bears spent the number 10 overall pick on the guy. They really want to get him going. Ben Johnson was really, really, really wanting to get this guy on the Bears. So, honestly, you may not be as impressed with the volume that he's gotten leading up to week 9, but I mean, I am, because you can see it slowly starting to increase as he's building chemistry with Caleb Williams. And it didn't really matter whether or not Cole Kmet was out there, because Kmet was at least serving as a minor distraction in most games where he's seeing a floor of like 1 target. Unfortunately, Cole Kmet's time in Chicago, I think, is coming to a close as he's transitioning Colston Loveland into this offense. I mean, if you watched our draft show back in April, you saw how upset I was that the Bears drafted Loveland, but it at least is working out in this offense. Now, as we're getting to his fantasy value here, 6 of 7 targets caught for 118 yards and the 2 touchdowns. This was a big shootout game against the Bengals that we're not going to see this every single week, of course. No. So, Colston Loveland is at least tight end 2 value rest of season, and I don't know if he's going to reach tight end 1 upside right now, being that he is sharing targets with Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, Olamide Zaccheaus, and I mean, we'll see when Luther Burden comes back. He had the concussion, which is also why I don't believe Cole Kmet's going to come back for week 10 against the Giants due to the concussion. I'm still angry about that hit he took, by the way. That should have been a penalty, but nevertheless, I'm not a referee. I don't get to decide this stuff. So Colston Loveland, he's definitely worth a stash at this point. I wouldn't say I necessarily want him more than Juwan Johnson at this point, but Loveland absolutely should be rostered in more leagues than 27% of sleeper leagues and 23.6% in ESPN leagues. Go get Colston Loveland if he's out there.
Yep, I'd take Colston Loveland over Juwan Johnson right now. Obviously, there's a lot of guys I'm not starting him over, but as far as waiver wire tight ends go,
hater.
No, not at all. I loved the pick. He was my favorite tight end. I liked him more than I liked Tyler Warren coming out of Penn State, which we see how that worked out for me. But I digress. We're going to move on to, it's another rookie, Elijah Arroyo in Seattle, 5% rostered on Sleeper, 0.9% rostered on ESPN. And I think for me, Evan, what this comes down to is that this offense is just a lot better than I think anyone thought it was going to be. He gets his first NFL touchdown this past week against Washington. Again, not a ton of volume. His max has been 5 targets this season. That was week 7 against Houston. He had 4 catches for 42 yards. By far his best game as a pro. But I also see him starting to fit into this offense a little bit. And as a speculative ad, if you're looking at a guy where you can add him and see what happens over the next couple of weeks, does he get worked into this offense more along with Barner at tight end? What do we see out of this? I think he's worth a speculative ad that's not going to cost you anything on the wire.
It's a long shot speculative ad at best. Sure. I'm not excited for Elijah Arroyo. Lou has even joked about Elijah Arroyo just being the next Noah Fant on the Seahawk team because his skill set is roughly identical to what Noah Fant offers, and he only caught 2 passes in that game against the Commanders where he scored that touchdown. His first double-digit fantasy points game of the season in PPR leagues, and it was only good for 29 yards anyway, and without that touchdown, that's still low-end tight end 2 value that barely counts as more than 0. So, no, I don't want to go after Elijah Arroyo more than Juwan Johnson or Colston Loveland, or, I mean, if A.J. Barner is even still out there, yeah, absolutely go get him. Really. He's the tight end I'd rather have over Elijah Arroyo.
Sure. Oh, yeah, no, I completely agree, and like I'm saying, I mean, this is a very speculative ad. You're not starting him anytime soon. But it looks like he's getting a little bit more comfortable in this offense, and I'd be interested as a speculative ad, especially in a little bit deeper league where he's not rostered. I wouldn't mind adding him. The last one we're going to talk about is Luke Musgrave, 1% rostered on Sleeper, 0.2% rostered on ESPN. Of course, with the news that Tucker Kraft is indeed done for the season, Luke Musgrave is the next guy up in Green Bay. But here's my issue with it. They had Luke Musgrave. Luke Musgrave was supposed to be Tucker Kraft. Luke Musgrave is not Tucker Kraft. I have 0 interest in rostering him. He caught all 3 of his targets yesterday, in the loss to Carolina. 3 catches for 34 yards. Quite honestly, that mostly feels like his ceiling to me. Like 7 fantasy points for Musgrave. I'm uninterested, unexcited in him as a waiver wire option this week.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people are going to end up overpaying for Luke Musgrave, but honestly, at this point, I think you can make a case to empty your FAAB to go get him. And I might look like a fool with this statement, and this is going to be a sneak preview for the waiver wire article that I'll need Carly to confirm whether or not that's published.
It's live.
Okay, so it's live. So I did write that this week, and I am going to stick by that because at this point, the Green Bay Packers are a team that is known for revolving their passing game around the tight end position. Nobody's going to be confusing Musgrave with Kraft out there. He's not quite as good. He's not even as good of a blocker as Kraft. So it's unfortunately, it is what it is with the Luke Musgrave. He was the 2nd-round pick. Kraft was the 3rd-round pick. Kraft was the better player by, quite frankly, a lot. And Musgrave will at least get his chance to prove that he belongs in this offense for the foreseeable future in these double-digit fantasy weeks. But I am calling him a tight end 2 until proven otherwise. He does not look like Tucker Kraft right now. Yeah, it's not going to feel as fun if you know what you're getting with Luke Musgrave to empty your FAAB with him, but I think the Packers are going to be targeting him in the red zone more often than not. I don't think it's going to be the Romeo Doubs show. You can't trust the wide receivers to step up in Kraft's absence because it's just whoever's open. It's like what the Bills do. So,
sure.
Yeah, Musgrave is somebody that you're probably going to have to empty your FAAB to go get.
Here's the one hitch to that for me is Christian Watson's healthy. And Christian Watson played that just absolute red zone beast role before Tucker Kraft did last season. So yeah. I could see Watson. I know, but I could see Watson, even though we don't want it to happen, I could see Watson stepping back into that role, and Musgrave then just almost becomes unrosterable. And if you dumped a bunch of, but it's worth the risk. If you're at a point where you need a tight end, Tucker Kraft was a huge piece. And if he's going to absorb that volume, if he truly does absorb that volume, he's worth every single penny you spend on FAAB.
Before we go to kickers, I must ask you, what was the point of getting Christian Watson back in this offense when they drafted Matthew Golden with a 1st-round pick? What was the point of all of that?
I don't know. I thought it was silly then. I think it's silly now. Well, because maybe you knew that Matthew Golden was fragile and they would never be healthy at the same time. I don't know. Who knows, man? I am not in the mind of a GM, and maybe there's a reason I'm not. Maybe we're too smart for that. They just never hire us. I don't know. But with that, we're going to move on to kickers. It doesn't take a GM to roster these guys. Some days it does. But we're not going to go crazy with this one here. Cam Little over in Jacksonville, kind of an obvious option. Dude boots a 68-yarder. He's going to be a sexy pick on the waiver wire, but he's been efficient all season, Evan.
Yeah, he made the 68-yard field goal, and you're going to want to go get him. The Jaguars' offense is still not good with Trevor Lawrence out there. It'll open up a lot of 4th down opportunities in the opposition's part of the field to get some field goals in there. And even if the Jaguars are back in their own territory, they're still going to send out Cam Little to go make the field goal. So he's absolutely a kicker you need to go get going into next week. Cam Little is, let me see how many fantasy points that was. 15 fantasy points if you have standard kicking scoring. So that's gonna be great for his share ownership. And they're playing the Houston Texans next week, which may be a little more difficult to get him opportunities to move the football. But honestly, even if he doesn't get to 15 points, I think I could see him going double digit again.
Yep. Oh, I could too. Cam Little's a good kicker in an offense that's going to support kicking volume. So that's a lot of what you're looking for here. Will Reichard over in Minnesota, he's my favorite kicker this week, Evan. The dude's got a huge leg. He's missed 2 field goals for the entirety of this season. Minnesota with J.J. McCarthy is going to have more stalled drives, in my opinion, going to give more opportunities for Reichard to boot another 50 to 60-yard field goal. He's made 6 50-yarders this season. He's the overall kicker 9. His rostership is just right around 20% in both platforms. So Reichard's my favorite kicker on the wire this week.
Yeah, and he's only missed 2 field goals so far. That's really not bad. I don't know if any of them were blocked because I don't watch enough Vikings games, but I didn't expect the Vikings to beat the Lions in week 9 either, and yet here we are. The NFC North is the best division in football. Anybody can beat anybody, and everybody's good. even if the records don't necessarily indicate it. But I digress. Will Reichard is at least a good ad for when the Baltimore Ravens take on the Minnesota Vikings, as that Ravens defense is still a bit iffy. They did just trade for the best pass rusher that the Titans have, but even then, I don't think that's going to be enough to change my mind. That just basically means that J.J. McCarthy will just have to get rid of the ball faster or take off running.
Yep, exactly. And again, like I said, with this offense, it's going to stall a lot of drives. They're going to give Reichard plenty of opportunities for kicks. We've got this question, and it's a kicker one, Evan, so I want to get to it real quick here. Should I drop Jake Bates to pick up Chimere Fairbairn? He's available on waivers. Yes, you should. He was my number one kicker in my waiver article this week. He's right around 50% roster, but if he's available in your league, he's the overall kicker one right now. And we're looking at a scenario here where if Davis Mills is starting, he can start drives, but he's a quarterback who can't finish them. He does not get into the end zone a lot. That's a lot of Fairbairn from mid-range. And if you're a league that gives extra points for longer kicks, it's even better with Fairbairn. So yes, absolutely 100%. Andrew Chisholm, we will get to your question here after we are done with this segment. And this one here, real quick, this is another kicker question while we're getting to these ones here from Oscar the BB. Speaking of kickers long-term, I'm in first place in my league, but the teams behind me are on my butt. Yes, Fairbairn's someone you can roster rest of season. Reichard's someone you can roster rest of season as well if he's not out there, but it sounds like you're going to go after Fairbairn. So good, you should. Fairbairn shouldn't be available in any leagues. And if it's a kicker league, he should 100% be rostered. But,
yeah, he's got a great matchup next week against the Jaguars. He absolutely will be among my top kickers next week, too. And when I get my rankings published, that is.
Yep. No, he's going to be amongst my top ones as well. Next one we're going to talk about is Chase McLaughlin. He's over in Tampa Bay. Look, he's kicker 6 right now. He's been automatic. He's not missing a lot of kicks. It looks like he's missed 3 this season. Tampa Bay's a team that scores points.
He's missed 4 field goals and 1 extra point.
Okay. 4 field goals and an extra point. That's not bad for a guy who's been fairly high volume. He's, like I said, he's kicker 6. He gets lots of opportunities for extra points. He's getting field goals. If he's available in your league, he'd be my second most rostered, or he'd be my second priority as far as kickers go on the waiver wire is what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, if the Patriots defense is a lot tougher than I think a lot of people give them credit for, but I don't see them stopping the Buccaneers' high-powered offense, even with some rotating wide receivers out there, and then a good tight end in Cade Otton. So that'll give Chase McLaughlin more opportunities to bang some long field goals between the uprights, and I think that can absolutely happen with McLaughlin. He made 3 field goals over 50 yards against the Saints. And that's a division rival game, so anything can happen in these division rival games. But normally I would think that they would be moving the ball a lot better than they did against the Saints. But hey, good for McLaughlin. Well, you'll take the points any day. Go get him if he's out there still. Should be a pretty good matchup against the Patriots.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Now, the last one we're going to talk about is Cairo Santos of the Chicago Bears. Again, he's just getting a lot of opportunities in this offense, and that's what we're chasing with kickers. If you're streaming kickers, Santos is a great option this week. They are up against the New York Giants at home. They're giving up a lot of points to fantasy kickers, so I like McLaughlin a lot. I like Santos a lot this week.
People are starting to get worried about Santos because he has missed 2 field goals over a span of 2 games, and Santos even had a missed field goal that was penalized that didn't end up counting. So you don't see it on the stats that Santos has there. It should be 4 field goal attempts, but it got taken away just because of a penalty. So ultimately, you can expect double-digit volume out of Cairo Santos next week against the Giants too. The Bears offense is a work in progress. It's not the prettiest thing to look at. They are excelling in their, I don't know if they're going to do more hot potato offensive tricks again against the Giants. I don't think that's going to happen again. Keep them guessing. But this Giants defense is just not that good. I am going to give them a little bit of credit, though. Their front is good. But if they have to face Kyle Monaghan again, good luck. Yeah. And that should move the ball for Cairo Santos to get in field goal range.
Yep. So, yeah, these are all good options on the waiver wire. Kicker tends to be a little bit easier because really you're looking for a floor of like 3 points. Like, please just kick 1 field goal or get a couple extra points. That's all I'm asking for this week. That's going to do it for the kicker portion of our show. But before we move on, I want to get to this question here, Evan. We've got Andrew Chisholm 3476 on YouTube. Wants to know, should I trade Quinshawn Judkins, Smith Kittle for Bowers, Lamar, and Tet McMillan? I have no quarterback with the Daniels injury. Would be starting Kenneth Walker without Judkins. I mean, you got to get a quarterback.
Yeah, but I mean, at this point, why do you feel you need to be making this trade at this time, Andrew? I'm not really following the logic here, because if you need a quarterback, you can absolutely go get one off the waiver wire with a bunch of options that we just covered as well. You don't necessarily need to trade for one either. I mean, ultimately, I don't see why you need to even do this trade, because the Bowers shareholder is not going to want to give him up at this point. He just had a big game against the Jaguars. So this is one of those trades where you need to talk to the shareholder for Bowers, Lamar Jackson, and Tet McMillan, because I don't see why that person would do this trade.
I mean, here's why. If they're depleted at running back and they maybe have like a Trey McBride, or they've got Harold Fannin, they're happy enough with what they've got at tight end, they feel like they can recoup those points they need to get a running back, then I could see the Bowers owner wanting to make this deal. But that's an extreme situation. If you can get this deal done, I would do it. I just don't know that you'll be able to get this deal done with the other manager. It seems a little bit far-fetched.
Agreed.
And relating to kickers here, Oscar the BB, where do you rank Chase McLaughlin rest of season, since you rank Kyrie number 1? I know that Tampa's schedule is one of the best during the playoff weeks of the season. He's 3 for me. I've got Kaime Fairbairn, and then Reichard, I think, is going to be kicker 2 rest of season with McCarthy now behind center. And then I've got McLaughlin at 3.
I don't have my kicker rankings ready to go, but just to clear things up, Oscar, when we were talking about Kaime Fairbairn being kicker 1, that's where he stands right now through 9 weeks of fantasy football. And that includes a week 6 bye as well, which is also pretty good for Fairbairn. Whether or not he remains at kicker 1 rest of season, I don't entirely know. I think he's going to have some tougher matchups against the Buffalo Bills, the Indianapolis Colts, the Kansas City Chiefs, and then the championship week, he faces the Chargers. So that'll be interesting for the Houston Texans offense, but I can see Fairbairn finishing as a top 5 kicker, no problem.
He's my kicker 1 rest of season. He really is. I think especially with the way this offense is trending, and whether it's Stroud or Mills, they're stalling drives all the time. There's a reason that Fairbairn, even with the bye week, is still kicker 1. It's because there's just so much volume for him. Let's real quick here, Evan. We want to give people the players that we don't want them to roster. It's a little bit of a lengthy list this week, but we'll start with Terrell Jennings, the running back who is now going to split time with Trevion Henderson should Ramondre Stevenson be out, but you can't trust the volume. Plain and simple. Really, you just need to back off both of those running backs until we get Ramondre Stevenson back. Tyler Shuck, the rookie quarterback in New Orleans, makes his debut start last week and looks like Spencer Rattler light. Long term, I think he's a better option, but he's just someone we don't believe he should be rostering right now. Same with Geno Smith. He had a nice game. That's great. Is it sustainable? More than likely not. He shouldn't be on your rosters right now, other than being a backup. Aaron Rodgers, same thing, man. He's been consistent. He's had some good games, but he's someone I wouldn't be tricked into on the waiver wire right now. This is going to eventually fall apart for him. We've got Pop Douglas, Blake Corum, Ty Johnson. These guys are all traps. They saw some nice volume this weekend. It hasn't been consistent, and you don't want them clogging up your roster. Bashal Tutin, he saw some good volume, but again, it's been so up and down. It's really hard to trust Evan. Is there any world in which you see Tutin rosterable rest of season?
Tutin is at least getting enough volume to roster like some standalone value, but he's currently seen as more of a handcuff than anything else behind ETN. I don't think Tutin is a must-have. But I mean, I don't think, as long as nothing else happens to ETN, like injury-wise, like he had to deal with last season, no, I don't think you have to go out and get Tutin. But I did have a question about Pop Douglas. Being that he plays for the Patriots, I'm pretty sure they call it Soda up there. So how is he not Soda Douglas?
Fair. Hey now. Woohoo. We're going to round out this list here with Rashard Smith, Emmanuel Wilson, Darius Slayton, Lake Washington, Olamide Zaccheaus, Michael Wilson, Treylon Burks, and Darnell Washington. Guys, stay away from these players. They are roster cloggers, and they are players that are going to greatly disappoint you. We gave you tons of better options on this week's waiver wire. So go check those out. And while you're at it, if you've got more questions, we didn't get to them here, you're watching the replay or you're listening to the audio version, head over to our Discord channel. The link is in the show description below. We are answering football related questions 24/7, whether it's fantasy, DFS betting, waiver wire, lineup advice, or just general NFL stuff. We're there to have the conversation. And then head over to tools.optimusfantasy.com. Check out all our shiny new fun tools and our one-of-a-kind world-class projections that will help you set your lineups, get ready for the upcoming week, and make those playoff pushes. All the data, 25% off your first 4 months with the promo code OptimusFall. And with that, Evan, it's time to get us the heck out of here. Get back to that Monday Night Football game. For Evan Sather, I'm Nate Polvogt. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.